All right, let's dive in. Today we're talking about something we all do, but almost never actually think about, and that is how we think about our own thinking. It's a skill that can absolutely transform the way you learn, the way you study, and really, how you understand the world.
Okay, so to get us started, I have a quick question for you. Just take a second. Who wrote the classic novel Jane Eyre? Seriously, what's the first name that pops into your head? Now, if you're like a lot of people, the name that came to mind might have been Emily Bronte. It just feels right, doesn't it? You've got the famous Bronte sisters. Emily wrote Wuthering Heights. It's a super common mix-up.
And it's not just about the answer itself, it's the feeling that comes along with it, that little spark of confidence. You might think to yourself, yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. You'd probably bet a coffee on it.
But here's what's so fascinating. In that tiny moment, two completely different mistakes just happened. The first one is a cognitive mistake. The answer was just plain wrong. The author was actually Charlotte Bronte. But the second and maybe more important mistake was metacognitive. Your evaluation of your own knowledge, that feeling of being pretty sure, was also wrong.
This whole scenario perfectly highlights the core issue we're tackling today. Let's call it the knowing you know problem. There's often this huge, surprising gap between how confident we are in what we know and, well, what we've actually mastered.
So, how do we close that gap? How do we get better? Well, the answer lies in developing a very specific skill, one that really separates the good learners from the truly great ones. And it all comes down to the skill of thinking about your thinking.
And that skill has a name, metacognition. At its heart, it's just the process of evaluating your own knowledge. It's about taking a step back and not just asking, what do I know, but asking, okay, but how well do I know it? And how confident am I really?
Now, metacognition really breaks down into two key parts. First up, you've got monitoring. This is the reflection part, that internal self-check. It's when you ask yourself, do I really get this concept? And then there's control. This is the action part. It's using that reflection to decide what you're going to do next.
And these two things are totally connected. You can't have effective learning without both. I mean, if your self-assessment, your monitoring, is off, your actions will be too. If you think you know who wrote Jane Eyre, you're not going to look it up, right? So flawed monitoring leads to no control.
Okay, let's see how this plays out in more practical, everyday scenario. Because relying on that gut feeling of, yeah, I think I've got this, can often lead us down the wrong path, especially when we're studying for something.
So, picture a student getting ready for a math test. They're reviewing their notes. Then comes that metacognitive part. They monitor their understanding and they think, I feel okay, but I'm not totally confident. That honest self-assessment leads to a control decision. You know what? I should probably do more practice problems. And the result? They're way better prepared.
And this right here is why metacognition is such a game changer. Your internal self-evaluation directly determines your external learning strategy. Think about it. If that same student had incorrectly felt super confident, they would have just stopped studying, and their grade would have taken a hit. Their success wasn't just about studying, it was about studying smart, all guided by good metacognition.
Okay, so we get it. It's important. But how do we actually get better at it? How do we calibrate that internal confidence meter of ours? Well, luckily, cognitive science gives us some really clear, actionable strategies.
So here's maybe the single most important rule of thumb. The absolute best time to check what you know is when the answer isn't staring you right in the face. It is so easy to feel confident when you're just rereading your notes or watching a video. The real test comes when you have to produce that information all by yourself.
And that idea leads us to two incredibly effective techniques. The first one is called retrieval practice. This just means actively trying to pull information out of your brain. Think flashcards or practice tests. The second one is spaced study. Basically studying in shorter bursts over several days instead of trying to cram it all into one marathon session.
So why do these work so well? It's because both of them force you to operate without a safety net. They create these situations where the answer isn't right there, which forces you to confront the very real gaps in your knowledge. And that makes your self-evaluation, your metacognitive monitoring, way more realistic and accurate.
So how can we make this a regular part of learning, whether it's for ourselves or for students we're teaching? The absolute key is to build these practices into our daily habits, not just save them for the night before a big exam.
You know, sometimes a tiny change in language can make a massive difference.
So instead of asking a simple question like, "Did you understand?" which almost always gets a yes, try asking something a little more predictive, like, "Okay, you might get it now, but when do you think you might forget this?" This just prompts a much deeper and usually more honest self-reflection.
We can also build the habit by just using simple prompts. Imagine at the end of a class or even just a study session, taking 2 minutes to answer these questions. This isn't a test, it's just a structured way to practice monitoring your own understanding and pinpointing, okay, here's where I'm confident and here's where I'm still a little fuzzy.
Another fantastic tool is a learning journal. This is literally just a place to document your process, not just what you learned, but how you learned it. What strategy did you try? Where did you get stuck? How did you figure it out? It makes the whole invisible process of learning visible, and it helps you reflect on what actually works for you.
So as we start to wrap this up, I want to leave you with a really important shift in perspective. Getting something wrong or realizing you were overconfident, just like with our Jane Eyre example, that is not a failure. It is not a reason to feel bad. It is simply data.
And this brings us to the final critical point. Becoming a better learner isn't just about celebrating what you know. It's about accurately identifying what you don't know. Both of those evaluations are absolutely crucial. Recognizing your own blind spots is the very first step to actually fixing them.
Every single time your metacognition is a little bit off, every time you think you know something but it turns out you don't, that is a golden opportunity. It's a signal, and it's telling you exactly where to focus your effort and how to adjust your strategy for next time. It really is the engine of improvement.
Look, we all make mistakes. We all have gaps in our knowledge. The real question isn't if you'll make a mistake, but what you'll do with it. So the next time you realize you were wrong about something, ask yourself, what is this moment trying to teach me about how I learn?